Royal tutors are talented and wise people, chosen to educate the princes in preparation for inheriting the throne. I met the person who was selected to be the royal tutor. These are the two people the king called to teach the 4 young princes. The king has 5 sons and 1 daughter, and to prepare for any misfortune that might happen to the eldest son, the king wanted 2 people to train the 4 brothers, because, in the king's view, all 4 of these sons were not ready yet. After a long trip, the 2 arrived at the royal family's castle, but the soldiers stopped him because they thought he was just a kid. He tried to show his tutor introduction letter, but they thought he was the tutor's son. Only when the queen herself came to pick him up could he easily enter. He also let these 2 soldiers know that he was an adult. The queen apologized to Hain for the soldier's mistake, but he was used to being misunderstood, so it was fine. Hain felt honored that, as a commoner, he could step into the royal palace, but the queen believed that since the king chose him, it proved he was talented because most previous tutors had quit halfway. While the queen thought all 4 sons were good, Hain also admired her affection. But no matter how the princes were, he would still teach them strictly, because they looked like they stepped right out of a painting. Hain met the 4 princes and was overwhelmed because they looked like they stepped right out of a painting. The first to greet Hain was Leon, a prince with an ego as high as Mount Everest. The second was Lix, the youngest of the 5 princes, with a playful and mischievous personality. The third was Bruno, who seemed polite but turned cold when he heard Hain had never gone to school. The second oldest was Kai, who seemed the quietest and naturally gave Hain a scary glare. After getting the information, Hain wanted to interview each prince to understand them better and choose lessons for them, but Leon refused because he didn't like tutors. Bruno also didn't want a tutor who had never been to school, so Hain now understood why previous tutors had quit. But Hain didn't care and wouldn't give up, because the father of all 4 had entrusted him with this job, so he would see it through. Leon demanded to reject Hain's lessons so the king would dismiss Hain, but Nick remembered it was time for visitors, so if Hain wanted to interview, he should come to his room afterward. Bruno also left and told the 2 who liked interviews to come on time. Being even a second late meant going home. Kai also was about to say something but then left, leaving Leon alone, so the 2 of them dragged him away. The document said Leon was humble, calm, and kind to everyone, but in reality, he was still the arrogant Prince Eversea. They asked why Leon hated tutors so much, and he said it was because tutors were as annoying as bell peppers, and he hated bell peppers. He also thinks he's not childish, but no matter how you look at it, he's still way too childish. But the main reason is that every tutor only cared about how the king felt to flatter him, never really paying attention to him. And secondly, he hates studying. Every time he's forced to study, he runs away, and because no one can catch him, he racks up tons of absences for running off. When the 2 tried to talk about studying, he already planned to run, but you insisted that Leon take a test. So Leon immediately ran away. When the front door was blocked, he escaped through the window. But Leon accidentally dropped his diary, and the 2 picked it up. When you read it, it's full of negative things Leon thinks about himself. He pretended it belonged to Nick, so Hain planned to return it, making Leon beg you to keep it, but Hain said he'd return it after Leon took the test. If he refused, you'd read it aloud for everyone to hear. If he refused, you'd read it aloud for everyone. Leon agreed to take the test. Hain saw that although Leon was lazy about studying, when he was serious, he tried to solve everything. Reading through the diary, you realized Leon had a weak side and looked up to Bruno as a role model. The arrogance he showed was to hide his weakness. The 2 brothers wanted Leon to come to a meeting at the end of the day, so you could start the lesson afterward. Leon didn't expect Hain to actually leave. Suddenly, a servant came and gave Leon a piece of cake, and on it was a note saying Leon had done well. So this was a reward. Then Hain went to see the second prince, Bruno, who was considered a genius with amazing knowledge. As soon as Hain met him, Bruno easily finished the test, and very quickly too. But Bruno wanted to test Hain back, because he thought no tutor had ever been smarter than him to really teach him anything. He challenged Hain to a game of chess, and phrases like, "didn't expect to meet a reckless guy" were said, as he checkmated Hain to everyone's surprise. Still not satisfied, Bruno challenged him in several other subjects, from mental arithmetic and music to gambling luck. In the end, Bruno gave Hein a test, and not only did Hein solve it quickly, but he also found errors in Bruno's work, showing Bruno had a huge gap in skill, making him realize he could never beat Hein. Hein noticed the thesis Bruno wrote and decided to read it. He understood the effort Bruno put into it and gave very precise advice and feedback. So Bruno accepted Hein as his master. You realized Bruno was just trying to find someone to look up to as a teacher. At that moment, Nick burst in and saw the interview here was finished. So Nick took the two girls away. Hein knew Nick was an extrovert who often sneaked out of the palace to hang out and flirt with girls. When Hein met Nick, he had brought several girls back to his room. Everyone liked Hein because he was cute, and Hein found that sometimes being misunderstood like this was actually nice. He then asked the three girls to leave the room for a while so Nick could take the test. He let Nick try, but Nick acted bored and even asked the three girls for answers. Hein wanted him to do it himself, so Nick worked while chatting. In no time, Nick finished. Nick really wanted to know if Hein was actually AI, because previous tutors had reputations or royal connections. But Nick then left with a serious face to bring the girls back in. Hein also told him to come to the meeting in the afternoon. When leaving, Hein noticed Nick seemed like the person to be most cautious of, because on the surface he looked clueless and playful but could do anything when the other side let their guard down. Then you went to see the last one, Kai, who was considered dangerous and had fought back in military school. When you arrived at his room, the servant said Kai was out and that few people could talk to him. You only had an hour before the appointment, so you quickly went to find Kai. Outside in the garden, Tune saw the royal dog had taken your book. Tune chased after it and found Kai sleeping. Kai woke up and grabbed Tune's hand, noticing it was quite soft. Kai still saw Tune as a teacher and often came here to play with the dog. You felt Kai was nothing like the rumors. And his gaze, which seemed intimidating to others, was just Kai's normal look. Kai wasn't good at socializing. Kai really liked soft things, and when he saw Hein had a test, he obediently took it without any complaints. The youngest sister, Adele, came by and was introduced to Hein by Kai. Adele then went out to play, and Kai really liked Hein as his teacher, because he was the first to talk to him. Tune told Kai to come to the group meeting too, and Tune felt Kai seemed friendly, just as expected. And you were wrong thinking Kai was the most troublesome one. Tune decided not to trust rumors anymore and would get to know each person better. That would also be a lesson Nene set for himself. That afternoon, Tune finished scoring and had 10 minutes until the appointment. Bruno ran off very early and met Leon. Seeing his brother, who had objected earlier this morning but now had changed, made Leon even less able to accept it, and he ran away. Bruno arrived at the meeting room first, and Nick came right after. Seeing his younger brother disrespect Hein made Bruno very upset, so he started arguing back. Kai also arrived then, and seeing them argue, he stepped in to mediate. Actually, neither was afraid of Kai, but Kai was so pure-hearted that neither could argue back. Only Leon was left. But Bruno wanted to just leave it be. Hein only taught when everyone was present, so Bruno planned to look for Leon, but saw him sitting outside the door. Leon still thought he was there to see Hein fail, but everyone else was already here. Everyone had their reasons to like Hein, so you decided to give the test results right there. Bruno, of course, got a perfect score. Kai got 87 points. Nick was a bit careless on the simple questions, so he got 60. As for Leon, every A I thought there must be something wrong here, but actually there was no problem at all. Leon got everything wrong, and only scored 1 point for writing his name correctly. Leon was so embarrassed, but Kai encouraged his younger brother because Leon is good at sports. Still, this score was just terrible. He thought he was embarrassed because of Hein, so he ran away. Bruno said Leon hated studying since he was little, because his first tutor was very strict. Falling behind made the tutor put pressure on Leon, which left him hurt and caused him to hate both studying and tutors since then. Hein decided to change Leon, because a tutor's duty isn't to leave emotional scars on their students. After that, Hayne jumped down from floor BA and caught up with Leon by riding his unusual horse. Since he couldn't reach the stirrups, Hayne rode like that. He tried to stop Leon, but Leon wouldn't listen, so he had to rush and push Leon down. He said Leon shouldn't feel ashamed about that score because he never intended to punish him. That score was really terrible, but a tutor's duty is to change that. He believes Leon has his own good qualities, so he will teach him the things he's weakest at. The other three are the same. He has to teach them everything necessary to prepare for the throne. Before he could say more, Leon ran away again. He believes someone who can recognize their own weaknesses like Leon will understand others, and that is a good trait. Leon doesn't have to accept it right away, but if he agrees, let Hayne help him improve day by day. They both accepted each other afterward, so how do we get home now? Walking would take hours. The horses ran off and didn't come back. By evening, Bruno wanted to go find them both, but the soldiers wouldn't let him because it was already dark. The two teacher and student camped outside, and since Leon wasn't used to hardship, he complained about everything and blamed the two Nevilles for losing the horses. After arguing enough, they both managed to get back to the palace before morning. The two Nevilles were taken to a room, but the bed was so big that they couldn't sleep. By morning, they were found stuck between the bed cracks. When asked where Leon was, they found him still sleeping, but when they went to the classroom, Leon had already been sitting there to study with the two Nevilles. The other three brothers just arrived, and still, Hayne took out a pile of books to start teaching Leon. The other three brothers just arrived and were still arguing, so Kai had to mediate again. Leon was doing his work, but then rolled over and fell asleep. That day, the two brothers wanted to teach all four about the lives of the people, so they planned to take all four down to the city for a trip. Leon wanted to know why all four had to learn this, so Hayne gave the example of a princess long ago, who ignored the people and partied endlessly, only to be overthrown and beheaded by them. Leon felt nervous, so he just studied about the lives of the common people. Hayne wanted all four to disguise themselves, so the townspeople wouldn't recognize them. Lix was the one who came up with the idea and the outfits for the four brothers when going into town. All four brothers still didn't know which way to go. Lix volunteered to lead the way, but gave up after a while because he was used to going out with girls before. The two NEs pointed out places along the way, and since it was their first time in town, they suggested the four go shopping. Bruno ran off to buy books. Kai went to buy something too, so Hayne and Nick showed Leon where to shop. When entering the shop, Leon picked the item he liked but didn't even know how to pay, or the value of the money, so Hayne taught him a lesson. Still not quite getting it, Leon handed the money to the shopkeeper to take herself. She took the correct amount and gave him change. Leon was thrilled that he had successfully shopped. Nick and Leon then slipped away because they had things to do together, leaving the two NEs to shop with Bruno. Bruno liked every book in the store, but because of budget limits, he was only allowed to pick one. After some hesitation, he finally chose one. The two of them went to find Kai and saw him feeding birds in the park. The two NEs also fed the birds and almost got carried away by them. Nick felt a bit hungry, so he invited the whole group to eat sausage rolls. Leon and Bruno didn't know how to eat without a table, plate, or utensils. Hayne taught all four how to eat, and Bruno found this way a bit difficult, but Lix and Kai adapted easily. In the afternoon, as the group prepared to leave, a thief snatched a bag from an old lady, but the old lady wasn't upset and even felt lucky because the thief didn't push the boy over. Seeing this, Leon wanted to chase after the thief, but was held back because Kai had already gone after him and retrieved the items. Kai said he was allowed to act by Hayne. While things were chaotic, the old lady thanked Kai and gave him a bag of candy. She also gave some to comfort Leon for standing up to help a stranger like her. Two soldiers then came to take all five of them back. Hayne wanted to know what impressed the four the most on their trip, but everyone was only impressed by the things they had experienced themselves. So Hayne pointed out that the smiles and the people themselves were the most important things. Although there are bad people, the police acted quickly to help resolve the situation. This city isn't like before, but since the four brothers' father became king, he has brought peace and helped the people smile like this. The two NEs want them to strive to become even better kings than their father. All four are determined to become kings with their own hopes and dreams. But the two were just pacing around the stairs. Returning to the palace, Leon invited the two NEs for a walk, but they just paced around the stairs. When they got to the study room, Leon asked if the brothers had finished their work. Knowing the four students were hiding something, the two NEs opened the door to find a dining table. The four brothers wanted to throw a party to welcome their new teacher. They had cooked the meal themselves and gave him the things they had bought today. That night, Hein could sleep well, with fewer worries about the four brothers. We learn about the four brothers' father. His name is Victor, and he was the youngest king when he ascended the throne at 58 years old. With outstanding talent, he was called the God of War. That night, a servant came looking for Hein. He said King Victor had returned after 6 months and was eager to meet Hein. The next morning, at the audience hall, the four princes were already there. The servant called all 5 of them in to meet. Upon meeting again, the four brothers greeted their father. The two NEs also greeted King Victor. Joyful to see his children, he was like any other father. But now Victor wanted to discuss things as a king. Victor reviewed the test results of all 4. He had nothing to say about the 2 older brothers. About Nick, Victor knew he got bored and rushed, scoring only 60 points. But Leon was the hardest problem. If things continued like this, he wouldn't be able to ascend the throne. Victor gave him 3 days to improve his score to match Nick's. If not, he would lose his right to succession. Bruno thought this was too harsh for Leon, but understood it was necessary. Leon felt pathetic, but his 3 brothers wanted to encourage him, because they had to see each other as rivals for the throne. But Leon didn't care about the throne, and only felt sad for disappointing his father. The two NEs thought this was because of Leon's stubbornness before. Bruno urged his younger brother to get up and start 3 days of training. He promised to help him in every way he could. The other 2 agreed. Now Bruno wanted to find a way to help Leon improve. Nick encouraged that at least Leon knew what 1 + 1 equals, but Leon's reaction was suspicious. So Bruno asked Leon if he knew the answer and was helpless when Leon said it was 3. Bruno couldn't believe his brother could be that dumb and asked Leon to think again. He was even more frustrated when Leon answered 11. Hein taught him basic counting using fingers, but if the fingers weren't enough, that was a dead end. Click was even more puzzled about how to teach Leon. Kai suggested teaching based on what Leon was good at, like running track, for example. Nick thought they should try having Bruno teach, because Leon liked him a lot. But when Bruno taught, it just made Leon focus on his style and attitude instead of the knowledge or words. Nick was out of options and wanted Hein to redo the test like last time and have Leon memorize all the answers. But Bruno slapped Nick because cheating isn't right. Hein then asked if Leon could remember the order of all 50 answers. But Heine had a way. He called someone to bring a plate with 6 pieces of cake and asked if each person took one, how many would be left. Leon immediately answered 1 and did an easy calculation. He realized it was easier to use cake as an example. Then he gave a bigger example. With 30 pieces, if each person took 1, how many were left? Leon still answered 25, and that was the way to teach. A day passed, and Leon was able to improve his score to 15. Tomorrow was the test day. Hein told his student to rest first and let him handle it. Still under 60, Leon should have been disqualified, but Victor graded according to the 2 rules by adding 1 point. Because the name was written correctly, everyone was happy that Leon wasn't disqualified. Victor wanted Leon to focus and work harder. He promised his father that, but his father wanted him to promise Hein too. Hein also agreed to that promise. Seeing the teacher and students smiling and talking, Victor was glad they could get along like that. That night, Hein came to have a few drinks with Victor. Victor was very happy that Hein was able to help Leon improve. But Hein wanted Victor to remember the deal. As long as no one knew about his past, he would keep teaching. Today, Hain went down to the street to buy some books and sat down to rest at a cafe. He went inside and was surprised when the waiter was Leon. But the waiter said he wasn't Leon, just looked like him. Hain thought he must have been mistaken and let it go. Just entering, Nick was startled to see Hain there. He was afraid that if he was exposed, his brothers and the king would hate him, so he decided to stay as low-key as possible. Nick was surrounded by girls he knew, but he was scared of being found out, so he deliberately avoided them. Soon, 2 teachers noticed him, so Nick wanted to ask the manager to switch his customers. But the manager refused because it was the cafe's rule. The owner noticed Nick was acting strange today. Just then, 2 people playing billiards accidentally started arguing. They almost knocked a coat rack onto a girl. Nick caught it for her and didn't forget to flirt a little. He then helped settle the 2 guys and scored a point. Everyone saw it as a draw. No one argued anymore. The 2 teachers were impressed with how he handled it. He left and didn't forget to leave a letter telling Nick to come to his room. On the way back, just then, someone in white came on Victor's orders to take Nick home. Hain was waiting in the classroom and saw that Nick had been picked up. Hain quickly went to Victor's office to talk. Victor heard everything from the day of the count and saw the misunderstanding about Nick when people thought Nick was just partying. Hannah believed that Nick wasn't partying at all, but was actually serious about working. Victor gave his youngest son a chance to explain, and Nick admitted that at first he was indeed partying because he thought being a waiter would attract girls. But when he first started, everything was a mess, and he kept messing up. However, everyone was still enthusiastic about teaching him, and gradually, Nick found it very interesting and decided not to quit. But Victor didn't allow it, because he worried that if his identity was revealed, Nick could get into trouble, that he wouldn't be able to intervene in time. Nick, however, thought Victor didn't love him, because when he was sick as a child, his father never visited, and since he's the youngest, the chance of succession was none. Nick believed his father was only trying to protect the royal family's reputation, and never truly tried to understand him. Then he ran away. Nick went to the shop and planned to live independently from then on. Then Victor and Hain arrived. Both tried to convince Nick, but it was useless. At that moment, the shop owner appeared. So Victor just said he was Nick's father and wanted to stay a few hours to better understand Nick. At this point, Nick tried to stop him, but under Victor's gaze, the shop owner softened. The shop owner changed Victor into a very handsome outfit. Victor tried to ask Hain's opinion, but Hain didn't like the stubbornness of the father and son, so he quietly sat down to prepare lessons. He left Nick to Victor to persuade, because the two were very much alike, and since this was a family matter, Hain thought it best to stay out of it. Victor tried to do his best at work, but Nick was just waiting to see where Victor would fail. But Victor did well at both serving customers and carrying things. When a foreigner needed help, Victor was there. He used a foreign language to help handle the situation. With his good looks and deep knowledge, Victor was admired so much that people wanted to adopt him. The shop owner also liked how Victor worked. Nick couldn't believe someone so talented and good-looking was the father who never cared about him before. At the end of the day, the owner even invited Victor to come work again next time, but he declined. The father and son then went outside to gather the signs. Victor apologized for not understanding Nick's feelings and trying to bring him back. But now that he understood, he let his son decide whether to continue working or quit. Nick decided to continue, but didn't want his father to worry about him anymore. Nick also somewhat understood why Victor never visited him, but Victor still came when Nick was already asleep. No matter how busy he was, he always kept an eye on his precious treasure, which made him so happy he cried. At this time, Hain finally showed up. He said he would come here every week to support and help protect Nick if anything happened. Soldiers came to take him away. Hain and Nick stayed behind. Later, Hain told Nick he was surprised by him. He thought Nick would be the most mysterious one, but it turns out Nick is the most normal among the siblings. Meanwhile, the Count was hiding in a corner. His goal was to bring Victor down and prevent him from having an heir. A few days later, the two wanted the 4 princes to discuss an issue. For example, if a jewelry shop was struggling and needed to borrow money from the government, what would they do? Nick quickly answered to lend them the money, but the law forbids the government from lending money to individuals, so that idea was rejected. Leon suggested asking the people for help. If everyone contributed a little bit, it would gradually be enough. It sounded a bit unconvincing, but Victor came and thought it was a pretty good idea. He wanted to present it to the council, so he asked Leon to write a report on the plan for him to submit. Hearing Leon praised, Bruno felt a little downhearted. Since he was little, he admired his father and wanted to become a king like him, but many people thought their eldest brother was the only one worthy. To explain, this family has 6 brothers. So far, we've met 5, and the eldest seems very talented, so he doesn't need tutoring. Wanting to surpass the eldest, Bruno threw himself into studying, but now he feels jealous of Leon. He worries that his younger brother might also be a genius like the eldest. Seeing Bruno upset, Hein tried to talk to him. Bruno said it was nothing, so Hein talked about the thesis Bruno was about to present at a university. This thesis was quite difficult, so Bruno wanted advice from Hein. Hein said Bruno was just repeating previous presentations, no new ideas, and most importantly, there were tons of spelling mistakes, so he marked them all. Hein thought Bruno was worried about something but didn't want to say, so Hein didn't push. Hein then gave Bruno a challenge. Write an essay about the changes he wants for the country, and if in 2 weeks he didn't produce anything worthwhile, Hein would no longer consider him a disciple. Motivated, Bruno cheered up and worked hard on the essay in his room. Whenever he wasn't satisfied, he'd throw it away and start over, working through the night until he often fell asleep at the desk. On the day of, Leon also gave the report to his father. Bruno gave his to Hein. Looking at Bruno's terrible expression, you could tell how hard he'd tried, and the result exceeded Hein's expectations. He thought Bruno was very worthy of being his disciple. With this essay, he could confidently speak at the university. Bruno went to the university and started his presentation. He didn't want to disappoint Hein. When the presentation ended, Bruno felt a bit down because he didn't see any reaction. Then everyone applauded loudly, helping Bruno regain a lot of confidence in himself. Someone later invited Bruno to present at their school. At that moment, Bruno's third idol, this professor, appeared. He was impressed by the presentation and invited him to have a meal. He offered Bruno to give up the throne and become a scholar with him. Meanwhile, Hein was waiting for Bruno to return. He saw the carriage bring Bruno back, and then the Count appeared. This man introduced himself as Jason. He was the assistant to the first prince, Hein. Jason informed Hein about Bruno's meeting tonight. Bruno was thinking about the professor's invitation because he believed was still hesitant because he still wanted to become like his father. But when passing by, he heard Victor praising Leon's report. He felt even more discouraged, so throughout the week, Bruno had no confidence at all. The answer was still hard to give, so Hein came to him while he was walking the dog. Hein heard Bruno express his frustrations, so he thought Bruno becoming a scholar was a good idea. He didn't have the right to decide the future for the 4 brothers, but he just wanted Bruno to think carefully about it. Otherwise, later when he's sick and about to die, he'll regret his decision, lying in a corner. Once he understood this, Bruno found his answer. Bruno went to see the professor and said he would come to the professor's school, but only later, when he was more mature. Because his dream was to become king, and he wouldn't give it up, whether he had a chance or not. The professor understood his determination and happily accepted his answer. He said if Bruno was free, he could come visit any time. Then he left, and Hein appeared. He was also impressed by Bruno's determination and wanted to work with him toward the goal of the throne. After hearing the news, Jason also didn't want Bruno to give up the throne. He wanted to move on to eliminate Hein. He sent people to gather information about Hein. One night, Kai came to see Hein because he needed advice. Bruno and Leon also ran over to ask the two a few questions. Seeing the older brothers were all here, Nick also followed. Nick had a question. Now he had one beautiful but flat-chested girl and another girl who wasn't very pretty. But for big stuff, you should choose AI. Bruno sees Nick should go to sleep to protect women in the world, but Hannah wants to hear about Kai's question. He's not hiding anything and tells Victor he wants to improve his communication skills, but he doesn't know how. Actually, all 4 brothers of I have issues. Nick is too unserious. Bruno lacks confidence to be king. Leon has no personality problem, but has a big issue with numbers. Kai only has communication problems. With people at home, it's fine, but with servants and guards, it's different. For example, when entering, if guards greet, they look at Kai like they want to hit him, and with servants, his face looks like he's cursing their work. Even though Kai doesn't say those things, others can easily misunderstand from his expression. Kai is afraid everyone will avoid him, so he doesn't know what to say. The more silent he is, the more scared they get. The next morning, Tuni will take Kai to practice communication. The next morning, the other three brothers took a day-o. The girl said she wanted to go to the zoo because the dog at home accidentally ruined a painting, which made her angry. The three brothers said the zoo is quite far, and they were reluctant to go, which made Adeo tear up. Tearing up, feeling sorry for her, so they took the girl to Hain. That idea seemed okay, and the first thing was, Kai needed to practice smiling. Hain did a terrible demonstration, so Leon took over. When they arrived, Hain wanted Kai to smile when he saw his favorite animal, but when Kai smiled, he looked even more dangerous. Then the group went to see ostriches, then bears. Leon thought bears would be cute, like stuffed animals, but actually it was the opposite. Adele was scared, so Kai comforted her, took care of his little sister, and the whole group went to feed the animals. All AI were surrounded by animals, except Bruno and Hain. Kai was lying among the sheep. Tuni wanted Kai to ask the staff for more food for the animals. Kai sweated, and when approaching, didn't dare to speak. Tried again, but still the same. But when he heard Adele cry out in pain from a rabbit bite, Kai went back with everyone. Adele agreed to make peace with the dog at home, after realizing she was too harsh on it. Now back to Kai. Hain wanted Kai to try communicating more with close people, like servants, in the palace. Just a few phrases that he usually uses to flirt with girls. Hain thought it was okay. Kai approached two servants and confidently said a few sentences, but the servants were still a bit scared and ran off. One girl was carrying something heavy, so Kai went to help her, then helped many others in the palace, and was misunderstood by the soldiers. Because he is afraid of scaring others. But if you try to say hello and thank you, then others will see that as polite, and who knows, some people might understand you. You then went back to your room, and the maid came to change the bed sheets. You decided to strike up a conversation. Kai shyly thanked her for always helping him. The maid liked it and was no longer afraid of Kai. Kai ran to meet Hain and B.A. his brothers to share the good news. Victor's assistant then brought Adele's painting over. When it was framed, this one was painted by Hain himself. He noticed a burn mark on the corner of the painting and suspected that a candle had burned there, and it must have been the dog that knocked the candle over, not that it damaged the painting. A few days later, Kai had improved his communication skills and was called by Victor, along with Tuni. Bruno had arrived here earlier, and Victor wanted to discuss the incident reported in the news as follows. Last year, when both brothers attended military school, there was an incident. They threatened teachers to get top grades without taking tests. Anyone opposing would be beaten, but that nightmare ended when it was discovered that CAI injured a student. Reporter wrote that this was covered up by the authorities, and the two brothers were suspended from school while the victimized student was expelled and faced pressure from the authorities. Bruno believed that this was a falsehood, but Victor couldn't do anything due to freedom of speech. The thing is, Kai really did hit someone. Tuni wanted to hear Kai recount everything. That was when both enrolled because Kai was scary. No one got close, but he noticed Bruno was injured many times and always used sword practice as an excuse. But one time, Kai waited too long and went to look for him. He found his younger brother being beaten. Unable to hold back his anger, Kai fought that guy. He beat him badly and got suspended himself. Meanwhile, That guy got expelled. The school wouldn't accept Leon and Nick, so Bruno dropped out too. Victor filed a complaint to the press and is waiting for their response. As for Kai, he will have to endure the words spoken inside and outside the palace. But Victor wants him to hold on for a while. Hein also read an article about a corrupt person sneaking into the palace. When Ra went out, Kai wanted to meet that student to confront him. He agreed to whatever that guy did to him, and he wouldn't fight back anymore. The two of us decided to go as mediators. The close servants all trusted Kai, so he smiled and thanked them. But his smile was pretty while his eyes looked terrifying. Bruno reminded them this was Kai's best smile, so please understand. When they arrived, Heine and a soldier went in first. This student, when hearing that Kai came to confront about the recent article, agreed to compromise. But when Heine went to call Kai, the soldier was caught by a gang. When Kai and Heine came back, the student said the soldier went inside first. Inside, the three of them sat down to talk. He said the reason he beat Bruno was because of rumors that royal family members can do whatever they want. Because he saw Bruno always got high scores, and the teachers only focused on teaching the two of them and neglected the other students, which made people jealous and led to that incident. He wanted to apologize, but when Kai tried to shake hands to make peace, he pulled out a gun. Ra and his men also came out and restrained everyone. The two of us and Kai, along with the remaining soldier, were thrown into the wine cellar and tied up. He planned to use all three of us to extort money because, since being expelled, when he left school, his family also kicked him out immediately. But when taking photos, both BA were mocking him, so he planned to threaten them to make them scared. When threatening Kai, his face stayed calm. Proved himself completely. His combat skills are no less impressive. He single-handedly defeated them all. He dodged all the bullets. Not a single hit landed. The soldier was captured. Kia then returned with reinforcements, but there was nothing left. Tuni told him to take all these guys to the police. Kai spoke up and wanted to invite this guy to become a palace guard to start over, because he didn't want to treat people too harshly and wanted to give them a chance to correct their mistakes. Kai praised his knowledge and abilities and said he would be a great help to the country. Hearing this, Kia felt somewhat relieved. A few days later, the article was corrected for accuracy. Hein accidentally met the noble Jason, and he wanted to know more about his past. Hein refused to answer, so Jason carried him away and promised he would take him back to the palace. On the way, Rosen said the princes have changed positively since Hein arrived. But Hein knew Rosen was the one behind everything all along, from getting licked to work to using the teacher to convince Bruno to give up the throne. But this time with Kai, it was uncertain. Rosen denied everything and wanted to focus on the article about corruption inside the palace. Just then, they arrived at the palace, so Hein got off the car. Right after arriving, he met Leon, who wanted to ask something, but Jason revealed that he already knew Hein's identity and that Hein used to teach at a church. When investigating why, Jason discovered something interesting about Hein. Hein stayed calm and told Leon to come inside. But Leon knew more about what Jason said, so he chased after Hein. Hein noticed, went around behind Leon, and asked him to talk. Leon didn't say anything and ran away, so Hein chased after him. Leon wanted to know about Hein teaching at the church, and Hein confirmed he volunteered to teach there. Leon also wanted to give Hein the homework he finished to grade. Seeing Leon willing to improve and no longer hating studying, Hein was quite happy because he had matured. Next was Bruno, who was teaching some kids, and Adele. When Hein arrived, Bruno said he still didn't know what to do. Then Adele and the kids came asking him to teach. The kids wanted to know more about Bruno, like what he usually did, if he had a girlfriend, and what he liked to eat. He didn't want to reveal his personal life, which made the kids disappointed. Tune told him that if he acted like that, how could he lead the people when he couldn't even lead the kids? The kids accepted Haynes' advice, so Bruno became more open with them. Tune said that if he acted like that, how could he lead people? The kids accepted Haynes' advice, so Bruno became more open with them. Next was Kai. He said he wanted to go back to military school, but didn't dare to tell his father, because he knew his father wouldn't accept it. He really wanted to go back to reconnect and learn how to communicate. Haynes advised him to convince Victor himself instead of asking for help, because that courage is necessary if he wants to be king. Finally, Nick came to the cafe to meet Nick. He realized that thanks to this job, Nick understood more about social realities. Tune wanted him to keep going down the path he had chosen. Nick listened and gave a kind of farewell speech. The next morning, the four brothers met to talk about Haynes' past. Based on what Leon heard from Jason, all four were still too clueless, so they decided to sneak into Haynes' room. They thought he wasn't in his room, so all four planned to open the door and go in. Just then, Tune came back carrying a pile of books for research, so the four of them could enter openly instead of sneaking in. They were shocked because Haynes' room was very messy, and he said it was because he was busy preparing lessons for them. The four brothers decided to clean up Haynes' room for him. Bruno came up with a plan, but it was too complicated, so they decided to just tidy up first and figure out the details later. Bruno proposed a plan, but it was too convoluted and complicated, so they would just clear through first and detail later. Haynes wanted all four of them not to touch his personal box. All four siblings thought this was something that could clarify the mystery, so they found a way to open it. But touching it would get them to and get suspicious, so Leon asked the two to scratch his back to help Nick open it, but as soon as he touched it, the two became alert. And he felt the same about the four brothers. Valuable to him, he felt honored to teach all four, and now, to punish them for tampering, he would prepare more assignments. The four continued cleaning. They asked Kai to return a few books to the library for me. Leon eagerly accepted and happily ran off. Just then the maid came in to bring tea and bumped right into Leon. The fall caused a chain reaction, making the whole room even messier. Before, the two wanted to help the four brothers clean up, but they didn't let him join and wanted to do it themselves. The four pushed the two back to the desk and cleaned up together. By dusk, the four had finished. The two went to prepare tea and snacks. As a reward, they discovered the two still kept an old newspaper article about criminals sneaking into the palace. They thought it was nonsense, because if a criminal got inside they couldn't escape. The two wanted the four not to believe anything without evidence, and what if that criminal was him? Four thought it was nonsense, and Haynes was just joking, because Haynes couldn't possibly be a criminal. The next day, Haynes used the article to assign homework to the four brothers, saying this news shouldn't be taken lightly, and if they were kings but ignored a rumor like this, it might put the whole country in danger. So the assignment was for all four to go downtown or do something to investigate the news in this article. Kai wanted to find the person who wrote the article, but the paper didn't have a name, but he knew who had edited the article, so they will go meet that person to ask about who wrote it last time. At the end of the day, Sky brought information about the writer, but that person resigned after finishing that article, and now they don't know where to find them. Nick still takes it lightly, but Bruno finds this quite suspicious, so he wants to go find the person. The four brothers searched all day the next day, looking for the author, but there was no information, yet Nick was able to find them. Cho told them this person changed their name and appeared a few times in the city's main hall. They went to the city and caught this person. When he was leaving, the four threatened to eliminate him, so he confessed that he received an invitation from a mysterious person. He didn't see their face clearly, and the other just asked him to write an article about how before King Victor took the throne, there had been a criminal at the Harvest Festival, and now that criminal sneaked into the palace. But when this person investigated, there was no information, so they suspected it was fake news. The four brothers went into the palace records and found a list of criminals at the Harvest Festival. Then Bruno accidentally discovered Heine's name, and he was arrested for kidnapping and attempted assassination of the prince. These happened before Victor took the throne, and that prince was actually Victor himself back then. Not accepting the truth, the four sat down to think. All four were sure Heine was the real criminal, because he assigned all four to investigate and made sure none of the four were in danger, because the criminal Heine sent them to find was himself. All four ran to find Heine, but he was not in his room. They noticed Victor had returned, so they went to ask their father. But Victor still didn't want to break his promise. Then Victor's assistant brought the letter that 2NE sent, and only then Victor agreed to tell the four. Victor said that previously, he often escaped the city to observe the lives of the people. During one escape, his watch was stolen. Victor chased after and met Heine. Heine told the two kids to return the watch to Victor. Heine wanted Victor to go back, but Victor followed Heine to the place where the orphans that Heine cared for lived, leading this group and strictly forbidding them from committing crimes. The two kids saw Victor was hungry, so they gave him an apple, but he just bit it and gave it to a nearby girl. For many days after, Victor kept sneaking out of the palace to help the two kids. He showed the two kids how to earn money to take care of the children. Witnessing this reality, Victor promised himself he would change the country when he took the throne. Heinzen became the only friend that Victor had, and also the only person he could open up to. After recovering, Victor came to help Heine escape. He explained to the king father, and Heine was pardoned. A year later, Victor took the throne and built a church for Heine to teach. From an illiterate orphan, Heine became a respected teacher like he is now. Victor and Heine decided not to make this public to avoid controversy, and if the truth was revealed, Heine would leave the palace. Now Heine has left and resigned from being the royal tutor because he didn't want people to know the princes were trained by a criminal, so he resigned. Tomorrow will be the last lesson, so Victor wants the children to prepare thoroughly. That night, all four couldn't sleep. The next morning, they came to meet Heine in the classroom. Heine listened to all four. Victor retold the misunderstanding, but Heine wanted them to think as kings and put aside personal feelings. If a criminal sneaked into the palace, what would they think? What would they think? The honest answer is they would want to kick that criminal out. Heine's original purpose was to train them to become worthy kings. A king can't make decisions when overwhelmed by emotions. About Leon, he's very foolish, but knows how to recognize his own weaknesses. He has abilities and imagination beyond others, so he will be a good king. As for Nick, he's humble, treats everyone equally, and knows how to listen. If he becomes king, he will build a country where no one is discriminated against. Then there's Bruno, who is highly knowledgeable, has never neglected his efforts in studying, and can pass on knowledge to others. He has good judgment and decision-making abilities. If he becomes king, he will create a fair country. Finally, there's Kai, who has a selfless heart and the strength to overcome adversity. If he becomes king, he will use his strength to bring peace to all the people. Now the last lesson is over. That afternoon, Heine officially left the palace. That evening, Victor came to see the four children. Victor saw that all four were unhappy and informed them that the new tutor chosen by Count Jason would be coming. Victor just hopes the four will get along with the new tutor, but none of them accept anyone other than Hain. Since the council hasn't decided on the tutor yet, all four want to present their opinions to the council and try to prove that Hain is the perfect person for this role, because the royal tutor must be someone who guides the princes to mature enough to be fit for the throne. And all four only need to prove that they're mature enough. Then the council will have to agree. The four of them work together to research and create a presentation good enough to convince the council. According to Victor, it's also nice to see his children trying so hard. Hain had returned to the church. Victor stopped by to greet Hain and told him that there would be a meeting that afternoon to choose the new tutor, and that the four princes were planning something. Hain wanted Victor to stop them from doing something stupid, but Victor refused. He said if Hain wanted, he could come watch the meeting. At this time, Rosen had nominated someone the council seemed to like, so they planned to pick that person right away. Then the four princes arrived. They didn't have the right to nominate the tutor, so they only came to introduce that person. But even so, the council is the one who decides whether that person is accepted or not. They nominated Hain to return, but Hain was exposed by Jason as a criminal in his past. Plus, Hain didn't have any qualifications, which made the council even more upset. But all four argued back that everyone has mistakes in their past, and right now they are thinking as future heirs, not with childish thinking like before. All four don't want to make the wrong decision that would affect the country. They used the last lesson Hain taught to declare it as the goal they all strive for when they become king. Only thanks to Hain did they realize that. Their speech was praised and applauded by the eldest brother. Those upstairs who heard it were also moved. Those upstairs who heard it were also moved. Leaving the meeting room, Victor met the eldest son and Count Rosen again. The eldest brother was very surprised that the four younger brothers had clearly matured so much. Since it was time to vote, Victor went back in. The eldest brother also forbade Jason from interfering anymore, because he wanted to compete fairly with his siblings. The next day, the royal tutor came to teach. All four brothers were happy and welcoming. All four brothers were happy and welcomed Hain Sensei's return.